It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story, a once-in-a-generation storm.
Oh, whoa! Oh, my God! Whoa!
Record-breaking winds hit the UK and Ireland, causing destruction, travel cancellations, and thousands of homes still without power. Cities across the country deserted, with residents told to stay home, and amber alerts for wind and rain remain in place. Also tonight, why wasn't he stopped? We look at the missed opportunities to prevent Axel Rudakubana from murdering 3 girls in Southport. Hamas names 4 more Israeli hostages expected to be released tomorrow in the ceasefire deal. Immigration raids in the U.S. gather pace since the inauguration of Donald Trump, and asylum seekers live in fear of deportation. Plus, campaigners and Prince Harry supporters threaten private prosecutions against the publishers of The Sun if police don't open new investigations. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. More than 1 million people were left without power today as Storm Eowyn barreled across the United Kingdom and Ireland. 1 man has died after a tree fell on his car in County Donegal. Schools were closed and trains and flights were cancelled as wind speeds reached more than 100 miles per hour in some parts. Now, the storm has caused major disruption across the British Isles, with the whole of the island and Northern Ireland placed under a red warning for the first time. Satellite imagery suggests a dangerous weather phenomenon known as a sting jet, a small area of very intense winds developed over Ireland. Now, in County Clare, record-breaking wind speeds of 118 miles per hour were recorded. This is how the storm moved across Ireland, the north of England and Scotland today, causing disruption. More than 1,000 flights were cancelled in the UK and Ireland, which is about a fifth of the flights that were meant to take off. There's been widespread rail disruption too, with cancellations on English, Welsh and all ScotRail services. And ferries between Northern Ireland and Scotland have also been cancelled over safety concerns amid the wind speeds. Sky's science correspondent Thomas Moore reports.
The most intense storm on record barreled into County Clare on Ireland's west coast in the early hours, waking people with its fearsome roar. At daybreak, meteorologists braved the cliff tops to measure a wind speed of 118 miles an hour, even faster than the 114-mile-an-hour gust officially logged by Ireland's weather service overnight, both breaking the previous record set in 1945. The winds battered buildings in Lahinch, windows blown in or smashed by flying debris, terrifying for those inside.
I haven't been out, but thanks be to God, I haven't. There's slates in the front of the house, and there's slates, and there's an area there in the yard. So hopefully I got away scot-free.
I didn't go to bed at all. I was up all night, because, I was just concerned that any slates or anything, as I said, would fly in through anybody's window,
In Northern Ireland, damaging gusts swept through a caravan park in Millisle.
With the wind speeds in Northern Ireland being the strongest since 1998, that certainly would suggest it's a once-in-generation storm for Northern Ireland and potentially for parts of central and southwest Scotland as well.
Trees were uprooted and power lines brought down across the island of Ireland. The lights went out for more than 1 million homes and businesses, and power companies have warned it could take a week for some to be reconnected. In Portrush on the north coast, shops and schools were shut. Only the hardiest braved the streets.
You tried to go out for a family stroll. What's it been like?
Yes, the wind's ferocious and very wet. The waves are kicking over the wall there, so we're all drenched.
The centre of the storm is now passing just offshore and the wind speeds are peaking. It is hard to stay on our feet as the gusts swirl around the streets of Portrush, whistling and howling through the houses. This is quite an extraordinary storm.
Parts of Scotland were also under a rare red danger to life warning.
Oh, wow!
In Grangemouth, shocked residents watched on as the wind peeled off their neighbour's roof, and across the country rail services were suspended. Forth Valley Royal Hospital was without electricity for a short period after backup generators failed to kick in during a power cut. Police said the storm had tested their resilience plans.
The issue that we have with this is just the size and scale of it in terms of the ferocity of it and the amount of the country that it actually covered, which presented a unique challenge to us. And what that's probably going to mean is a slightly longer recovery time.
Northern England was only under a yellow warning, but winds were still strong enough to tip lorries on their side. The clean-up will take days, but those who felt the full force of Storm Eowyn, it was an experience they will never forget. Thomas Moore, Sky News in Portrush, Northern Ireland.
Well, many people chose to stay at home because of the warnings in place today. The red warnings moved from Ireland and Northern Ireland through to Scotland by lunchtime. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis reports now from the deserted streets of Glasgow.
Friday morning in Scotland's biggest city.
Much of Scotland is pretty much shut down as
the day the centre of Glasgow became a ghost town. And here's why: a danger to life. An order to remain indoors as hurricane-force winds ripped through the country. This is Scotland's busiest shopping street, and look at it, hardly a soul in sight, every single shop closed. It has a similar feel to those grim first early days of the COVID lockdown.
Well, actually, I think there's still more people out during COVID, though, because we could go out for a walk, couldn't we? Well, we went into the boots, like the pharmacist is open.
It's like a ghost town. We thought we'd spend an hour or two in here, but it's shut down.
We're used to the wind.
This is nothing for us.
This is nothing for us.
This, the city soundtrack, the usual noise of traffic replaced with the eerie whistle of the wind.
These are your pizzas.
Jamal's Pizza Restaurant, apparently the only one open here.
There are people visiting to the city centre to Glasgow that will live within city centre, within the vicinity, and then looking for a coffee, for lunch, for some food, some drink, and nowhere is open, not even supermarkets, not coffee shops, nothing.
And the staff are all fairly happy to come in and get on with it?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Like I said, they live within walking distance, so there's no trouble getting in, and they're safe and secure, and I wouldn't put anybody's life in danger.
And as that immediate danger is lifted, the communities battered by this storm will begin a clean-up that's likely to take days. Conor Gillis, Sky News, Glasgow.
Well, our North of England correspondent Charlotte Leeming is in Newcastle for us. Charlotte, already one man has died and some weather warnings are still in place tonight.
That's right. Good evening. Yes, some really sad news coming out of Ireland tonight, confirmed by police there that a man has been killed in the storm after a tree fell on his car in this morning's rush hour. And this has been such a powerful and dangerous storm affecting millions of people, and the disruptive weather, I'm afraid, is set to continue. We have now snow and ice warnings in place for Northern Ireland and Northern Scotland for tonight and into the morning, as a frosty blast now strikes the UK after that ferocious wind. And we're not out of the woods as we head into the weekend either. The Met Office have issued more weather warnings, and they are for wind, rain, snow and ice across many parts of the UK. So a very unsettled picture again on the cards for the next few days. People are hoping the worst is over, and we know those red warnings are no longer in place, but anyone heading out this weekend are still being urged to take heed to those warnings, to take extra care as well on the roads and on the trains, because travel disruption is still very, very likely.
Charlotte Leeming in Newcastle. Charlotte, thank you. To Southport now, and authorities are preparing for a public inquiry which will look into the murders of Alice da Silva Aguiar, B.B. King and Elsie Stancombe. Yesterday, Axel Rudakubana was given a 52-year minimum sentence. He was known to the authorities but wasn't stopped. A former social worker and member of the Association of Child Protection Professionals has told Sky News that the system needs to change to recognise a new type of risk. Sky's social affairs correspondent Becky Johnson reports.
He may never say why he made this journey intent on murdering innocent girls, but how was he able to carry out such a horrifying attack when the threat he posed had been flagged to the authorities many times? Since Axel Ruda was 13, he'd been violent, with a dangerous interest in mass killings. He'd meticulously planned the attack, murdering B.B. King, Elsie Dot Stankham and Alice de Silva Aguiar. When police arrived to a scene of horror, the teenager holding the knife was someone they'd been called about many times before. In October 2019, he'd taken a knife into his school, Range High in Formby, and was excluded. He was referred then to a multi-agency safeguarding hub and mental health services. Months later, he returned to Range High with a knife in his bag and attacked a child with a hockey stick. He pleaded guilty to assault. 3 times he was referred to the counter-terror programme Prevent. Teachers found him researching mass school shootings and a terror attack. However, he wasn't deemed a terrorism risk. In 2021, he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. In 2022, police found him carrying a knife on a bus after his mother reported him missing. A week before the murders, he attempted to travel to his former school before his father pleaded with a taxi driver not to take him. Prosecutors believe he intended mass murder then. Despite years of red flags, there was nothing to stop him going to Southport that day. He didn't slip through the net. He was in the system. It failed. Now the public inquiry into the attack will have to establish why in order to protect others from people like him. This former social worker says services designed to protect children haven't caught up with the growing number of cases where the child is the risk.
There's an increasing occurrence of referrals being made in which parents are afraid of their children in terms of violence and mental health.
He says options for social workers can be limited.
In extreme cases, they can apply for a secure order for a child in which a child is placed in care in secure accommodation. They are very rare, partly because they are highly expensive.
Ruda was on the radar of so many agencies. The question is why no one took action to stop him.
I think a case like this just highlights how systems have to be made as robust as possible to try and pick up people who perhaps are acting in a lone way with extreme ideologies, but perhaps ideologies that don't fit into any particular box.
There is consensus that the authorities need to confront the growing threat from loners obsessed with violence. The public won't accept that nothing can be done to stop people murdering at random, taking young, innocent lives. Becky Johnson, Sky News.
Hamas has announced the names of the next 4 hostages to be released tomorrow under the terms of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. 3 prisoners were released last weekend, and our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has been speaking to the families who welcomed them home.
It's been almost a week since Romy Gonen, Doron Steinbrecher and Emily Damari were released from Gaza. They are still in hospital recovering. Doran's cousin says that her condition is still fragile and she needs privacy.
Those 3 young women were held mostly underground in tunnels under terrible circumstances, and you can only imagine after 471 days there that both mentally and physically she would need a lot of time to recover and heal.
Gaia Khalifa was shot and killed by Hamas at the Nova Music Festival. Romy Gonen was her best friend and with her at the time. Gaia called her father moments before she died.
He just heard, "Daddy, Hamas terrorist shooting over here." And Gaia, the 2 last breath, deep breath.
You heard her last breaths.
Yeah.
Romy's release has been difficult for Gaia's family. They're delighted that she is free, but it has also revived memories of October the 7th.
I know from the beginning that Gaia not gonna come back. But when I saw Romy, it's remind me what happened in the October 7th. And it's make me the same feeling that why it's happened to us. But in the same moment, you feel that Romy, it's the last memory from Gaia, and she knows everything. And when I hug her, I feel like I hug Gaia.
On Saturday, the 7th day of the ceasefire, Hamas will release 4 more Israeli hostages, and Israel will free 200 Palestinian prisoners. The 4 Israelis that Hamas has named are Karina Ariev, Daniela Gilboa, Liri Albag, and Nama Levy. They were all serving IDF soldiers taken from the Nahal Oz base in southern Israel on October the 7th. In Gaza, Palestinians will also be allowed to start moving from the south of the Strip back to the north, returning home after months living in these tents. But many will find that their homes no longer exist. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
Well, Sky News has been given a copy of the first official reconstruction plan for Gaza since the ceasefire. In recent days, Hamas has re-emerged as the area's main governing authority, despite suffering major losses in the war. And the document is a sign that it intends to be a leading actor in the rebuilding of the Strip. Here's our data and forensics correspondent, Tom Cheshire.
Welcome to the school run in pre-ceasefire Gaza. This one is made out of parachutes salvaged from aid drops. Tent schools like this are necessary when 88% of education facilities have been damaged. Despite the relative normality in this video, taken before the ceasefire took effect, children were studying in constant fear.
I was happy because the blood will stop. We will not be hearing massacres day and night. And my family, or what is left, or the rest of my family will be okay, hopefully, for the coming few days. I lost my father, many of my friends in this war, and I don't want to lose anyone else.
1.9 million Palestinians, 90% of the population, were displaced by the war. The ceasefire offers the possibility of return, but for many, there is nothing to return to. There is, though, a plan to rebuild. From Gaza local governments, as it stands, still led by Hamas. And the blueprints for that have been shared with Sky News. It shows a short, medium and long-term plan. The areas highlighted here in yellow are locations people should move to for the time being, either side of the red line that separates north and south. They say these zones are closer to hospitals and cleaner water and soil. Then priorities for the next 6 months: housing, transport, economy and healthcare. This map is the latest assessment of damage to medical infrastructure and how they're planning on fixing it. That includes trauma support and underground storage facilities to make them more resilient. There are even ideas for underground tunnels to connect cities. That's bound to infuriate Israel, especially if these plans are perceived as coming from Hamas. But who builds it, who funds it, and what sort of government runs it are all unknown. In the meantime, Gazans will have to rely on the little infrastructure that still exists. More than a year of war has meant hospitals are barely standing, let alone functioning. And now they must find a way to look after hundreds of thousands of people potentially returning, as one hospital director in the north of Gaza told us.
This is a very big challenge for us, and we are trying our best to maintain, and we can give the supply and medical service at that moment.
Blueprints are one thing, reality is another. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
President Trump has been in North Carolina today, which was hit by Hurricane Helene in September last year. While he was there, he criticized the response to the disaster.
I'll also be signing an executive order to begin the process of fundamentally reforming and overhauling FEMA, or maybe getting rid of FEMA. I think, frankly, FEMA is not good. I think when you have a problem like this, I think you want to go and, whether it's a Democrat or Republican governor, you want to use your state to fix it and not waste time.
Well, in just under an hour, President Trump will be in Los Angeles to see for himself the damage from wildfires. Our U.S. correspondent Martha Candler joins us now from Pacific Palisades in Los Angeles, and we can see the destruction behind you there, Martha. And for the thousands of people who've been affected by these fires, the words of the president are going to be quite worrying.
Yeah, very worrying indeed. We're expecting Donald Trump to arrive here shortly to witness scenes like this in Pacific Palisades, and destruction like this is quite literally around every corner in this community. So people here will have been listening very closely to some of the threats that he's been making this morning when he was touring those disaster-hit areas in North Carolina. He was proposing the idea of severely changing the way that FEMA operates. FEMA is the government's emergency management agency. It's been in place for decades, or abolishing it entirely. So that would be a huge, momentous move if he is to abolish FEMA, and particularly worrying for the people of California, because he's also been threatening over the past couple of days to withdraw aid to wildfire victims unless the state's Democratic governor, a man named Gavin Newsom, who Donald Trump refers to as Gavin Newscum, unless he addresses the state's water supply. A serious difference in opinion between the two men about the water issues that blighted Los Angeles as firefighters were trying to tackle those blazes. So Donald Trump continuing to make news today, but away from the politics, away from the president, there's also concern for people here about the weather, not the wind and the fire this time, but the water. There is rain forecast in Los Angeles both tomorrow and Sunday. Concerns that there may be landslides. Pacific Palisades is in the foothills of the mountains. Concern that mud may come down from those charred mountainsides. Another threat to this community, which has endured so much.
Now, with the latest there from Pacific Palisades in Los Angeles. Martha, thank you. Well, staying in the U.S., U.S. military planes have been deporting migrants to Guatemala today as immigration officers continue to carry out raids on people who don't have correct documentation. President Trump has promised mass raids and deportations, sparking fears among those hoping to apply for asylum. Sky's international correspondent Diana Magnay reports now from Philadelphia.
Touchdown in Guatemala. Undocumented migrants deported from America on U.S. military planes. And the photos Donald Trump wants you to see, tweeted by his press secretary, of his immigration crackdown in action.
We're getting the bad, hard criminals out. These are murderers. These are people that have been as bad as you get, as bad as anybody you've seen. We're taking them out first. Thank you.
The raids are gathering pace. In Boston, in Newark, federal officers going door to door, rounding up migrants for deportation. Enough to put a chill on immigrant communities like this one, known as Africatown in southwest Philadelphia.
A lot of people are scared right now to come out because of the threats and the way he said he's going to take people back home to their country. A lot of people that don't have a document.
Franklin, not his real name, is waiting on his asylum application. He wants us to hide his identity because he's scared of jeopardizing his claim.
Yeah, there's fear. It can get off your
Yes, there's fear, he says. It can't get out of your head. It's in your head, it's stuck with you. Even when you get out there and you find someone staring at you, you're concerned. Who are they? Someone telling on me? You know, you just don't know.
You just don't know.
But millions voted Trump because of his hardline anti-immigrant promises, and he is following through. One of the latest moves by President Trump and his team is to allow immigration officials to carry out raids in churches and hospitals and schools. Those were protected areas under Joe Biden, but now the message is loud and clear. Anywhere you are, the state can come after you. Nowhere is safe.
Hi, John Vandenberg here from...
Immigration lawyers say anyone can get caught up in the raids and that immigrants must know their rights.
If they go out to find, Mr. Jones, and Mr. Jones happens to be at home with his family, they could ask about the family members. If Mr. Jones is at his workplace, they could ask for the people around them. Those collaterals are also the point, because it's easier for the officers to pick up the numbers. You go for one guy, you come back with 5. It's easy numbers.
So what advice are you giving people?
Don't get into trouble, and talk to your lawyer fast.
America was the end of a long, long road for so many who came dreaming of refuge and maybe even a better life. Now fearful that this new golden age of America first is not for them. Diana Magnay, Sky News, Philadelphia.
Campaigners who supported Prince Harry through his legal battle against newsgroup newspapers are looking into the possibility of private prosecutions against journalists and executives they believe acted unlawfully against the prince. They're compiling a dossier and say that if the police don't open fresh investigations, they have enough evidence to prosecute those they believe illegally intruded into the prince's private life. Sky's royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills reports.
Today, the cover-ups are exposed, and today proves that no one stands above the law.
Words of victory on Wednesday, but calls for more action are ramping up. The team who supported Prince Harry demanding responses from Parliament, press regulators and, importantly, the Met. And if police don't take it up, Sky News understands there is a chance that individuals could launch private criminal prosecutions.
If unlawful behaviour took place and the people who did that lied under oath, not just to the public, but at the Leveson inquiry and in a court case, what does that mean? The very worst that means is it's perjury, which is a criminal offence.
Morning, Hugh. Hey, morning.
Hugh Grant has joined those calls, along with Tom Watson, who also settled this week.
To Sir Mark Rowley, when you receive our dossier exposing wrongdoing, will the Metropolitan Police act?
We've spoken to those putting together that dossier about the Sun and the News of the World and been told it will include information that police weren't able to obtain in the past.
I think the next thing, I also don't think this is over.
Former Lib Dem Cabinet Minister Chris Huhne, who reached a settlement, has already written to the Police Commissioner.
Are they going to mess up a third time? The Metropolitan Police has behaved appallingly. I would much prefer to see another police force deal with it because, frankly, the Metropolitan Police has not covered itself in glory in this whole thing.
Newsgroup newspapers apologise for their serious intrusion into Prince Harry's private life, but continue to deny allegations of a criminal cover-up.
How are you feeling, Prince Harry?
Harry, so far, has remained silent, but ultimately his perseverance has given others the ammunition to fight for more accountability. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by political commentator Tim Montgomery and Zoe Williams, columnist at The Guardian. Among the stories we'll be discussing, the Daily Telegraph claiming that Sir Keir Starmer prevented the judge from handing the Southport killer a whole life sentence. We'll be right back.